Welcome to the Homeschool High School podcast brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com. And I am so excited today because we have fine arts finally. Today we are talking to Cody Wheelock from Fount Atelier of Fine Arts. Like, if you had a better name than anything, like, this is it. So, Cody, say hi, and let's do two things. Tell us about the name of what you do, the Fount Atelier, and about your connection with the homeschool community.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, everyone. So my name is Cody Wheelock, and I am the owner and director at Fount Atelier. Story about the name. Atelier is actually a French term that means studio. And traditionally, a lot of times students in 19th century Paris, they would go study at these professional artist studios, also known as ateliers, to get their formal training. And then my studio is located in the Kansas City area. We're the city of fountains, so I thought Fount Atelier rolled off the tongue.
So you got history, and you got the honoring the name of where you live, and I just think that's the coolest thing. So how did you get started doing what you're doing, and what's your connection with homeschoolers these days?
Yeah, definitely. So I started out as an art teacher. I was always the art kid growing up. Everyone said, "Oh, you're going to be an artist and this and that." And so I thought, okay, well, let's do that. Except how do you turn that into a career?
Yeah.
So I decided art teaching sounds good. I could go into that and I could still do art. So I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Nebraska. I got a master's degree in art education from Boston University. And I taught in public and private schools for about 10 years, most recently at a college preparatory academy up in Omaha, Nebraska. And I loved doing that, but I just felt like there were a lot of things lacking and we were kind of limited in what we could do in that type of setting. So about 4 years ago, we struck out on our own, and I set up Fount Atelier as a private instructional studio so that I can do my own artwork for clients, but then also work with all sorts of families. And I've been able to really serve the homeschool community and provide them a creative fine art outlet for them to take their students to. So it's worked out great, and I absolutely love all my homeschool families.
Yeah, so I can see we're recording on Zoom here, and so I can see your studio behind you, and it looks, like the perfect place for a student. All of these stations set up and like surreal art. But you also have things online, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
do have students that come work with me here in studio, but then I also offer online art coaching as well. And I have a sequenced program that students work through that's based on the 19th century French academic method of training oneself in classical drawing and oil painting. So students can work through that entire program online just as they do here in the studio. So it works out pretty cool.
Yeah. So I just wanted to launch into that because sometimes when you say fine arts, we homeschool moms who that's just not our training or our talents. Our brains just kind of shut down. And so if we know right up front, there's somebody who likes what they're doing in the fine arts and has some offerings for young people, we'll put links in the show notes. But what we wanted to talk about today is some practical ways to get some fine arts into the home. And so Cody, we were talking back and forth online about how to kind of do that. So let's talk. Besides transcripts, most of the kids need a fine arts credit on the transcript, but in overall, why should homeschool families incorporate art?
Yeah, so to me, it really comes down to three big reasons why homeschool families should incorporate art into their schooling practice. And the first thing that comes to mind is just exercising those creative muscles. So I'm a believer that we are all designed in the image of the ultimate creator. So because of that, we all have this innate urge to make things and create things, and we do it in different ways, right? Some people are really into gardening, they'd love to do that. Some people are into woodworking and sewing or crocheting, or there's umpteen different things that people are into, but fine arts is definitely one of those. And so I think that just having an artistic practice in your homeschool just gives your students, and maybe even you, mom or dad, the opportunity to just kind of have that creative outlet. And, it works our brain in kind of different ways, I think, than studying
Yeah.
math or science. There's some overlap,
Yeah.
but it's a different way of thinking.
That is such a good point, and you started out with my favorite thing of all is how our brain works, because in my other hat as a counselor, we know that when we exercise the creative part of our brain, it releases healing hormones, like it's healthy for our brain to do anything creative. So, started off on a good topic there. So, all right, what else would you suggest about why we should do art?
Yeah, so aside from exercising those creative muscles, another thing that comes to mind is just it gives us an opportunity to just slow down and just be in the moment for a little bit. I think that today, and as you know, as a counselor, our teens, us as adults, but our teens as well, are absolutely bombarded by messaging and social
Mhm.
media and this
Mhm.
and that. And it's just everything is so fast paced that
Mhm.
it seems like we don't really have very many opportunities to just
Mhm.
slow down and just
Mhm.
be for
Yeah.
a little bit. And when you engage in something like observational drawing or
Mhm.
painting, where you're actually sitting down looking at something and concentrating on it for a period
Mhm.
of time and limiting your distractions, wow, that is such a good thing to do, because it almost resets us mentally to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yep.
Um, you know, I, I really enjoy plein air painting, and that is getting outside and painting on location. So instead of doing it in a studio, I'm
Uh,
taking all of my gear out and setting up
oh,
at a
neat.
lake or a
Mm.
mountain or whatever and painting that. And I tell you what, just the process of standing there for a couple of hours and
Mm.
intently
Mm.
observing what's in front of me, I can look at paintings and sketches that I've done from several years
Mhm.
ago, and I can remember what it felt like that day, what
Yeah, like the
the weather
feeling
was
comes
like.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how our brains will just kind of, take in
Yeah.
that information. And how often do you just stand in one spot for an hour and a half or 2 hours and just intently look?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't do that very often.
Hey, my counseling hat, we call that mindfulness. And we know
Yes.
any time where you're just stopping and noticing and just doing one thing or having a moment of awe, like when you're just looking and noticing that we're releasing all kinds of healing hormones and activating the calm down systems in our brain. So you're making me very happy here, Cody. This is just really awesome.
Yeah, and I think that spills over so much into other areas of life and subjects, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you have an hour or so where you can practice a little bit of mindfulness doing a
Hmm.
creative activity, then if you have a math lesson or social studies or what history or
Hmm.
science or whatever afterwards, I just think it makes that so much better because you are not feeling quite so rushed.
Right, and not so stressed out about it, and you can learn better. So see, art is good for the brain and good for the soul. So,
Yeah.
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 Any other things that you would suggest about why we should incorporate art?
Yeah, well, a third thing that I thought of is that, in my opinion, art is a fantastic lifelong hobby to cultivate,
Mm,
or even a fun side gig in a way.
mm,
So many people think that, oh my goodness, if I do artwork, I have to be really, really good and I have to like show people and sell it and all
mm,
this and that. And yes, you could do that, of course,
mhm.
but you don't have to. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
there's so much pressure in the social media world that we live in that we have to like take a picture of everything we do and post it online so people can see. And that's
Mm,
so not the case. Um, I almost think of like and compare it to playing something like an instrument or a
mhm,
piano.
mhm,
I don't know about you, Vicky, but I know in our family we have some family members that can play piano. And just when we get together at holiday gatherings and things like
mhm.
that, it's so fun to be able to just sit down at a piano and they'll play holiday tunes or hymns or things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Um, and I think that art is the same type of thing. And it's one of those things that I feel like we don't ever really master it completely,
Right,
right?
right.
Like we
Yeah.
can always grow and we can
Mhm,
always get better. And if you talk to someone who's been doing it for 40 years, they'll tell you that
mhm.
the next painting I do is going to be my best painting.
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. And, you don't,
Yeah.
it's not dependent on you getting up and moving around a lot. So, you can do it
Yeah.
literally your whole life. Well, my
Right.
oldest student here at the studio is 82.
Oh my
So
goodness. There's
yeah.
hope for us all.
Oh,
Well,
that's right.
yeah, and I think that's important for all of us to know is that any person who does art doesn't start out being great.
That's right.
And my favorite quote of all time, which most people have heard me say, is anything worth doing is worth doing badly. And that's
I
how we
love it.
start learning anything.
I love
And
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I try and really hammer that home with all of
Mhm.
my clients here, young and old,
Mm.
in that you're probably going to stink at it at first, like it's okay. We want to make
Yeah.
mistakes. You can't learn unless you make
Yeah.
some mistakes. And
Yeah.
if someone wants to turn this from a hobby into a like something that maybe you could even make some extra money on,
Mhm.
when people see that you're good at doing something. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know what you think about this, Vicky, but I think that in the world we live in now, people have even more of an appreciation for well-made, like handcrafted things.
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
And I just, a lot of my students, not that we're necessarily pushing this, but they'll have people that will ask if they can purchase even their
Yes.
assignments or just things that
Yeah.
they do because they appreciate the skill
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
goes into it. And there's a lot of even stay-at-home moms out there that are turning, um, you know, just a fun painting or drawing or whatever creative
Mhm.
hobby into, some extra money every month.
Yeah, it's like you never know what will happen. It's just nice to have the attitude of starting
That's
and then
right.
to have some resources that you can start with. All right, so let's say you're a mom and you've got your teenagers and you need to get that fine arts credit, but you don't want to be all stressed out about it. What are some practical ways to start thinking, incorporating the arts into their homeschooling?
Yeah, no, great question. So, we talked about why we should do it. Well,
Mhm.
okay, that's great. We can talk about why we should do it all day long, but
Mm,
how do we actually do it?
yeah.
So I think there's really three things that I think can be helpful.
Yeah.
So number one, don't focus on creating masterpieces. And we talked about that a little
Yes.
bit. Focus on skill development.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so many times we want to sit down and just knock out this amazing piece, and that shouldn't always be the goal.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that you want to work on those individual drawing skills. We talk about observational drawing, things like having a
Yeah.
sketchbook.
Mhm.
What, how can we get better at those little things? And all of those
Yeah.
little things will eventually build up into a big
Mhm.
thing, like
Mhm.
doing a drawing or a painting that you're really
Yeah.
proud of. And I always tell my students, it's almost like playing golf in a way. I worked at a golf course growing up in the summers in
Ah.
high school, and we always kind of had fun with it because you'd see these golfers go out with these $300 drivers and they'd get on the tee box and they'd hit it and it'd still go 90 degrees the wrong way.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
It's not necessarily the equipment that makes
Yeah.
you great. It's really dialing down on those individual skills and
Yeah.
practicing
Yeah.
those. And so I think that when you can focus on skill development, that helps. And it really helps with
Yeah.
confidence too.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I find that a lot of my students, when they initially start, there maybe they don't have a lot of confidence in their
Mhm.
ability.
Mhm.
So if we can, instead of trying to make this masterpiece, if we can just focus on these little things and start piling
Yeah.
up some little wins and
Yeah.
stacking them,
Yeah.
pretty soon the confidence rises, and then they feel like they can actually tackle that big
Right.
thing they want to do.
Yeah, and we found that if you gain a little confidence in one area that you didn't think you had confidence in, and that confidence grows a little bit, it generalizes to other areas like, oh, if I can do this little skill in art, maybe I can try some other things too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And part of that is a second thing is just having a plan, right? Because it's
Mhm.
one thing to
Mhm.
say, well, okay, focus on skill development. Well, how do
Mhm.
you do that? Well, you do that within the context of a structured, sequenced plan, right? So
Yeah.
we have an end goal and we have steps that get to that end goal that start
Mhm.
off very simple, very basic. In fact, like
Yeah.
in my program I do with students, the very first thing we do is we learn how to sharpen a pencil.
Oh my goodness.
We do it
That's
the
awesome.
old-fashioned way with a knife and a piece of sandpaper.
Oh my goodness.
And I tell everyone, hey, you know what? Everyone can learn how to sharpen a pencil. I'll
Uh-huh.
show you how to do it, and we just kind of build up from there. So I think that if you can put together some sort of program or find a curriculum where there's some structure to it, it really helps, because I think so many art classes and outside art programs and things like that today, they're so project centric, in that, it's like, okay, here's a cool project, let's do that. All right, well, here's another cool project, let's do that. And then we just repeat that. And you're not necessarily sequencing and building
Right,
skills
to
on
get
top of
some
skills.
specific skills that then they can add to their life. Yeah. That is a cool, refreshing way to look at, all right, here's a plan, build some skills. Okay. All right. So if you're going to build a plan, what are some ideas for that?
Sure. So I always think I love the idea of backwards design.
Uh-huh.
So I love to, if someone says, well, I have no idea how to build a plan. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, what is the end goal? Like, what do you
Uh-huh.
want to do eventually with it? Okay, well, let's
Mm-hmm.
say I want to paint a landscape, right? In oil
Mm-hmm.
paint. Okay, great. You want to paint a landscape in oil paint. So that's the end goal. So let's work backwards from there. What do we need to do and be able to do in order to get to that? Well, you have to understand composition and how to design a scene, right? And make it successful. Okay, great. Well, what do you do? What do you have to do to get there? Well, you have to first be able to know how to create the individual elements in that scene, in that composition. So learning how to paint and learning how your materials work and learning how to mix color and render value and edges and all these technical aspects of making a painting. Well, what do you need before that? Well, let's see, I need to have some references, right? I need to actually have something to paint. So gathering reference material, and you could just keep going backwards and backwards until you get to the most basic level of just, like holding a paintbrush. How do I hold a paintbrush? How do I
Right.
tape? How do I set up a canvas on any, I mean, you can make it
Yeah.
as simple as you want, but I think that
Yeah.
when you do that, then, you kind of give yourself a pathway to success.
Yeah. Yeah. And having some kind of idea of where you're going and how to get there. And
Yes.
that's sometimes it takes a teacher to be able to do that. So,
Sure. Yeah. And,
yeah.
and I think anyone can develop a plan, but it does
Mhm.
help to have someone help you with that sometimes. But,
Yeah.
so many times, especially with art, I think there's a lot of just kind of grasping in the dark, right? Like, oh, let's
Yes.
do this, let's do that. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily connect. And
Yeah.
which is always funny to me, because music, when someone learns an instrument,
Mhm.
there's a plan, right? There's
Uh-huh.
kind of
Yeah.
most people don't just sit down and just start plucking at a
Yeah.
guitar and can
Right.
play an amazing song. But if for some reason in most art training today, that idea has gotten lost a little bit. And
Mhm.
it's all about just be creative, just express yourself, and whatever you do is fine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not helpful if you want to actually get better at the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. All right. Any other thoughts about, like, if a family wants to incorporate art and they're
Yeah.
thinking, creativity, they're thinking having a plan, what else?
Yeah, so I think the other the third thing that is really helpful is to find a way to get some feedback, some
Mm,
constructive feedback from
mm.
someone. Because a lot of us, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes it could be a family member who maybe knows a little bit more about visual art and has some
Mhm.
skill built up already. It could be
Mhm.
an outside teacher. It could, there's lots of different ways you can go about getting the feedback, but
Mhm. Mhm.
be open to getting the constructive feedback on your work. That way you can
Yeah.
learn, hey,
Yeah.
this looks good.
Yeah.
You know, that could be improved. Here's
Yeah.
how to improve it and make
Yeah.
it better. And then we can learn from that, and then we do it again,
Yeah.
right? And we'll get feedback on that. And yeah, and I think that the important term there as well is constructive feedback.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think we see it both ways. Sometimes you'll get friends and family members who look at a drawing or a painting that a student does and think, "Ugh, that's
Yeah.
I don't know, not so good," right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not really helpful.
That's not helpful.
But then on the other end, you'll also get friends and family members who look at something that their homeschool student does and they'll say, "Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that looks so good. We're so proud of you. You're such a good artist." That's great, but that's not very helpful,
It's not
right?
going to help growth. Yes.
That's right. You need a little bit of both. So you need to be able. So like I always try and point out, 2 or 3 wins, right? No matter what level someone is, and then I'll also include 1 or 2 points of improvement.
Yes.
I don't even call them bad things or mess ups or whatever. It's just
things
ways
to
you can
learn.
improve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that if you can get some sort of outside feedback from someone with a little bit more experience, someone who's a little bit farther down the path than you, it can really help.
Yeah. Which leads to the atelier kind of opportunity. So let's say a family wanted to connect with you, Cody, how would they do that?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways they can connect with me. So if you want to just learn more about this process and my online program, but even if you just have general questions about how to incorporate this type of thing into your homeschool practice, the best thing to do is probably to check out my site at www.fountsatelier.com. Take a look there. Shoot me an email at info@fountsatelier.com. Happy to answer any questions anyone has. Hop on a Zoom call with a family if they want to chat. And then I also have a YouTube channel as well. So if you just search Founts Atelier on YouTube, my channel will pop up and I try and offer drawing and painting demonstrations, just general tips on how to do it better. And I take my viewers along with me on some of my plein air trips. I just took a trip last summer to upstate New York in the Hudson Valley area. So I kind of document my plein air painting adventures. So yeah, there's all sorts of fun stuff on there.
Yeah, well, we'll be sure and put links in the show notes to all of those places. So I hope everybody checks that out and gets inspired and feels more confident to get some fine arts and enjoy that fine arts credit on the transcript. So Cody, thanks for joining us today. And we will look forward to talking again sometime, I hope. Okay.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It was a lot of fun to chat with you, Vicki.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, this has been the Homeschool High School podcast brought to you by 7sistershomeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. Thank you to Seth Tillman for editing, and we will see you all next week.